quirks, crashes, triumph, and lawsuits. The DeltaWing story has it all, and it starts here. It's 2010, and Indy Car has a problem. For the better part of a decade, a sport once roaring with glory
it's fast.
had become a bit stale. TV ratings were down, grandstands were thinning out, and the same spec car had been running since 2003. The series was getting tired, and fans weren't exactly in love with how the car looked or how they sounded. The magic had faded. So, IndyCar put out the call. It was time for
A new car!
designers, engineers, and dreamers were invited to propose the future of open-wheel racing. Something exciting, something modern, something that might actually convince people to care again. The usual names responded with familiar ideas. New body shapes, bigger wings, smarter tech, shinier paint, all trying to recapture the golden era of the 70s and 80s. But then, someone showed up with something else entirely. It had no aerodynamic wings or roaring V8 engine, the front tyres were only 10 centimeters wide, and the car had a completely normal shape with perfect proportions. But, despite these oddities and its completely normal shape, it still had the speed of a regular Indy car, thanks to its lightweight and incredible aerodynamics. And the crazy thing is, it did all of this while using half the power and half the fuel.
The concept of the car is to halve the aerodynamic drag, half the power, half the mass, half the fuel consumption, half the tyre consumption, and still achieving the performance of our competitors.
It was called the DeltaWing, named after a similarly shaped aircraft wing. It was Ben Bowlby's revolutionary vision for the future of IndyCar. It was a design praised by many as genius. Others just stared at it like it had landed from space. But why was it that shape? Because race cars, surprise surprise, are expensive. The more powerful the car, the more it costs to build and operate. More power means bigger engines, stronger gearboxes, more fuel, and faster tyre wear. And when a set of tyres costs a couple of grand and you're touring through 200 sets in a season, it adds up. But you can't just take away the power and expect fans to stick around. People come for the speed, the spectacle. So, what if you can make the car less powerful, more efficient, and cheaper to run without sacrificing that thrill? That was the challenge the DeltaWing set out to solve. And it's the reason it looks more like a jet than a car. By using its radical shape to reduce drag and building it to weigh about half as much as a regular Indy car, it could match their high speeds with a tiny 4-cylinder engine producing just half the power and using half the fuel and tyres. And there were people inside IndyCar who backed it, who believed in its madness. But in the end, unsurprisingly, they went with something a bit more familiar.
There's a rolling chassis and enhanced safety cell, which will be produced by longtime Indy Car partner Dallara.
The next Indy car would be built by Dallara. Wings, side pods, same size front and rear, the usual formula. And just like that, the DeltaWing's hopes were dashed. Its campaign was over before it ever reached the grid. And so, the lights were turned off, and the DeltaWing project was over. But it wasn't. After putting in so much work and knowing exactly what they had, the team weren't going to watch it rot in a warehouse. So, a new plan was hatched. If IndyCar didn't want it, maybe the most grueling road race in the world would. Le Mans. The team submitted an entry for the special Garage 56 slot at the Le Mans 24-hour race. It's a place reserved for experimental prototypes, and the organisers loved it. They were in. But Le Mans is no demo run. It's 24 hours of relentless speed, sleep deprivation, and mechanical abuse. And if the DeltaWing was going to survive, it needed some upgrades. The team got to work. A brand new chassis was built to meet Le Mans specs, and Nissan came on board as engine supplier, with a turbocharged 4-cylinder said to be somewhat derived from the Nissan Juke. Yes, that Juke. After months of preparation, the car was finally ready. It was time to find out whether the DeltaWing would deliver on its radical promise or fail spectacularly. The world was watching. The lead up to the first practice session was tense. The team needed to complete at least 20 laps to qualify the drivers for the race. Fall short here, and it would be over before it even began. Unfortunately, the DeltaWing smashed it, clocking up 54 trouble-free laps on its very first outing. Now it was real. The DeltaWing was going to race at Le Mans. After a few more clean sessions and an impressive qualifying performance, placing 29th overall, the quirky little car lined up on the grid alongside 55 others. The 24-hour battle had begun, and to everyone's surprise, it impressed. Pace was strong and it managed to stay mostly reliable. But then, after 6 hours and over 1,000 kilometers of racing, heartbreak. A Toyota LMP1 crossed the track like a bowling ball, slamming into the tiny DeltaWing, and the contact sent it off the road and into the wall. The driver spent 90 gut-wrenching minutes trying to fix the car trackside, with nothing but hand tools and sheer determination. But it wasn't enough. The damage was too great. The DeltaWing was out. For many, this could have been the end of the road, but the story only gets weirder from here. After repairing the DeltaWing's crumpled parts and shaking off the Le Mans disappointment, the rebuilt car was entered into the 10-hour endurance race at Road Atlanta in the US. But it didn't get far. Those new parts were reduced to 1 million pieces after a Porsche, apparently auditioning for an action movie, sent the Delta barreling onto its roof. Things weren't going well for the Delta, but that was about to change. The car was painstakingly rebuilt again, just in time for the race. And starting from pit lane, the DeltaWing had its work cut out for it. Or so everybody thought. It shocked everyone off the start, slicing through 8 cars in the opening lap. The Delta was on fire, and for once in a good way. By the end of the race, with 388 laps under its belt, it crossed the line in 5th. The Delta didn't just finish, it ate the competition. Ben Bowlby had proven his concept, the DeltaWing worked, and in doing so, he'd made a statement about thinking outside the box. But for one of the car's biggest backers, Don Panoz, that wasn't enough. Panoz didn't just want one DeltaWing, he wanted a grid full of them. What followed was a dramatic split. Panoz cut ties with Nissan and removed them from the project entirely, continuing to develop the car with a new engine. Meanwhile, Nissan went off and built its own version, without telling anyone, and hired Bowlby, the DeltaWing's designer, to lead the project. When Panoz found out that Nissan was working on its own pointy race car, he was furious. He took out full-page ads directly targeting Nissan's CEO and accusing the company of stealing the design. Nissan, never one to back down, fired back with something unexpected: the Blade Glider concept, a pointy electric road car that used the DeltaWing layout. That was the final straw. Panoz hit back, this time with the lawsuit. And sadly, from here, the DeltaWing story slowly fades away. Nissan's version of the Delta made a triumphant return to the 24-hour of Le Mans, and it completed 5 laps, then broke, and it was never seen in a race again. The road-going Blade Glider concept never made it to production, and the lawsuit was quietly settled behind closed doors. Panoz also released an unusual road car concept in 2015, but it never became a reality. The original DeltaWing carried on racing in the US, now with a roof and a slightly more serious attitude. There were some bright moments, a 4th place finish at Petit Le Mans, and even a few races where it led the field. But the car was fragile, it had constant gearbox failures and reliability issues. And in 2016, the DeltaWing ran its final race, quietly disappearing from the spotlight after rule changes left it without a category to compete in. It didn't change Indy Car, it didn't win Le Mans, and it didn't even stand on the podium. But it did something far more interesting. It challenged what people thought was possible. It asked, what if we made cars faster by using less of everything, not more? It became a symbol of daring to dream, of building something different, of refusing to follow the rules just because everyone else does. It was the quirky triangle car that, for a short while, captivated the world. It was half the car, but twice the story. This is the DeltaWing.
It's about guilt-free high-performance motoring.